It had been exactly 3 months since we lowered my mother into the earth. The rain that day had been relentless, like the sky itself refused to let her go. I still remembered the smell of wet soil, the trembling in my hands as I placed her favorite white lilies on her coffin, whispering, "I'll see you again someday." Mom, I didn't know someday would come so soon. Life after her death felt hollow. I'd stopped cooking, barely slept, and spent most nights scrolling through her old texts. Anything to hear her voice in my head again. My husband Mark tried to help, but every "Are you okay?" only reminded me I wasn't. Then one evening, as I sat on the porch watching the storm clouds gather, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Mom. "Meet me where you buried me." My heart stopped. The screen blurred as I stared at her name, Mom, still saved with a little heart emoji. My first thought was that someone was playing a cruel joke. But the number was hers, the same one that had been disconnected months ago. I dropped the phone. Mark came running. "What happened?" I showed him the message with trembling fingers. He frowned. Maybe someone spoofed her number. But my voice shook as I whispered, "Then how do they know what I buried with her?" He looked at me confused. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. There was something I hid in Mom's coffin, something only she and I knew about. The night she died, I had slipped a small wooden box into her hands. Inside it was a faded photograph of her holding me as a baby, and a silver locket that she'd told me never to lose. She called it our secret. Now 3 months later, someone was using that secret against me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard her voice echoing, "Promise me, Sarah. Promise you'll never open that locket until I tell you to." But she was gone. Or was she? At 2:17 a.m., another message came through. "You broke your promise." I jolted upright. The locket, I hadn't touched it, hadn't even thought about it. It was buried with her. I woke Mark up. "Someone's texting me again." He squinted at the phone, now pale. "We're going to the police tomorrow," but I shook my head. "No, I need to go to her grave." He tried to stop me, but something in my gut told me I had to go. Tonight. The cemetery was shrouded in fog when I arrived, the air cold and still. My flashlight beam wavered across the rows of tombstones until it landed on hers. Margaret Evans, beloved mother and wife. I stepped closer, whispering, "Mom?" Only silence answered. Then my phone buzzed again. "You came." My hands went numb. I spun around, shining the light through the fog. But no one was there, only the faint rustle of wind in the trees. And then the impossible happened. From beneath the soil, just beside her headstone, I saw the earth move, a small shift, like something alive was pushing from underneath. I stumbled back, my scream caught in my throat. The flashlight slipped from my hand, landing beam up, illuminating the dirt as it slowly cracked open. The beam of my flashlight flickered as my breath came out in short, trembling gasps. The soil by my mother's grave was shifting, slow, deliberate, like someone was digging their way out from beneath. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The fog swallowed every sound. The movement stopped. Silence. Only my heart pounding in my chest. Then ding, another message flashed on my phone. "Don't be afraid, Sarah. Dig." I froze. My knees went weak. This wasn't random. Whoever it was, they were watching me. Right now. I swung the flashlight around, scanning between the trees. "Mark?" I called out, my voice cracking. "If this is you, it's not funny." No answer. I bent down, staring at the disturbed patch of earth. The rational part of me screamed to leave, to run to my car and never look back. But something stronger pulled me forward. I picked up the small trowel from my purse, the one I'd used to plant flowers at her grave before, and began digging. The cold earth crumbled beneath my hands. Inch by inch, something metallic glimmered under the dirt. I brushed the soil away and froze. It was the locket. The same silver locket I'd buried with Mom, the one that should have been deep inside her coffin. I fell back, the blood draining from my face. No, this can't be real. My phone buzzed again. "You weren't supposed to bury it." I could barely breathe. "Who are you?" I typed, my fingers trembling. The reply came instantly. "You know who I am." The message hit me like ice. I looked down at the locket, its delicate chain tangled in the dirt, catching the pale moonlight. It was cold to the touch, too cold. Slowly, I opened it. Inside was not the picture I remembered. Instead, there was a piece of folded paper, stained dark around the edges. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The note read, "If you're reading this, Sarah, I'm not where you think I am. Don't trust anyone, not even Mark." My heart nearly stopped. "Not even Mark?" I whispered. The locket slipped from my hand, landing softly on the ground. I stumbled to my feet and looked around again. The fog had thickened, wrapping the cemetery in silence, and then behind me, footsteps, slow, crunching on the wet gravel. I turned, my flashlight shaking wildly. "Who's there?" A figure emerged from the shadows, broad shoulders, familiar outline. Sarah. It was Mark. He stepped closer, his face pale. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I told you to wait for morning." I stared at him, clutching the note. "How did you know I'd come here?" He frowned. "Because you weren't answering your phone." I got worried, but something about his tone. It wasn't worry. It was anger. Controlled. Hidden behind concern. "Did you send me those messages?" I asked quietly. He blinked, then laughed nervously. "Messages? What messages?" I held up the phone. The latest text from Mom's number glowed in the dark. "He's lying." Mark's face went still. He took a slow step forward. "Sarah, you're scaring me. Let's go home." But I could feel it. That shift in energy, the same way Mom used to tense up whenever Mark entered the room. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I pocketed the locket and turned toward my car. "I'm leaving." "Sarah!" His voice hardened. "We need to talk about this." But I was already running. I didn't stop until I was back in the driver's seat, hands gripping the wheel, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror, and just as I started the engine, my phone buzzed one last time. "He wasn't supposed to find you tonight." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's face, pale, peaceful, but now laced with something else. A warning. The phone lay beside me on the nightstand, screen black. I didn't dare turn it on again. At 3:11 a.m., the silence of the house was broken by a faint sound. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the bathroom. I hesitated, then grabbed my flashlight and stepped toward the sound. The door creaked as I pushed it open. The mirror was fogged up as if someone had just showered. But I hadn't. And written in the condensation, in shaky letters, were 3 words: "He killed me." I stumbled back, dropping the flashlight. No, this can't be real. My breathing quickened. I wiped the words away, but they came back, faintly glowing, as if etched into the glass itself. That's when the phone buzzed again. I picked it up with trembling fingers. "Mom, you need to see the footage." Footage? My brain scrambled to make sense of it. Then I remembered the house cameras. After Mom died, I'd moved into her place for a few weeks to sort through her things. The cameras were still active, their cloud storage linked to her email. Hands shaking, I opened her old laptop, the one she used for everything. The login still worked. In the video folder, I found a file dated 3 days before her death. The title read, markvisit.mp4. I clicked play. The footage showed Mom sitting in the kitchen, facing the camera. She looked tired, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. The doorbell rang. She got up, opened the door, and in walked Mark. My stomach clenched. He looked different, colder. He sat across from her, speaking in a low voice I could barely hear. I turned up the volume. "Mark, you promised you'd stay quiet." "Mom, she deserves to know." "Mark, you can't keep hiding it." "Mark, if she finds out, she'll leave me." "Mom, then maybe she should." He slammed his hand on the table. "Don't push me, Mary." The screen flickered. The audio warped. I could hear my mother's sharp intake of breath, then silence. The video ended abruptly. I sat frozen, staring at the blank screen. My pulse thundered in my ears. My husband, the man who'd held me at my mother's funeral, had been at her house days before she fell down the stairs. My throat went dry. "Oh my God." I replayed the video, watching his face, the way his hands gripped the edge of the table, his jaw clenched with fury. It wasn't an accident. It was rage, and I'd married him. Suddenly the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Slow, steady. I turned off the laptop and held my breath. The steps stopped outside the door. "Sarah?" His voice, calm, gentle, too gentle. "I woke up and you weren't in bed." I froze. I couldn't sleep. He lingered by the door, his silhouette outlined by the dim light from the hall. "What are you doing in here?" "Just looking through Mom's things." He nodded slowly. "At this hour?" His tone sharpened. "You're lying." I swallowed hard, heart pounding. "I'm not." He took one step closer, then another. "You think I don't know when you're hiding something from me?" I stood up, forcing a weak smile. "You're scaring me, Mark." He smiled back, but it wasn't kind. It was the same smile he gave in that video. "Go to bed, Sarah," he said softly. "It's late." I nodded, pretending to comply, then slipped out of the room and down the hall. But instead of going to bed, I ran to the car. My hands shook as I started the engine, headlights cutting through the darkness. The phone buzzed again. "Mom, don't go home. He's following you." I looked in the mirror, and my blood ran cold. Headlights, a black SUV, pulling out of the driveway behind me. It was him. The road stretched out like an endless ribbon of darkness, and my trembling hands gripped the steering wheel tight. My heart hammered as the black SUV stayed glued to my tail. I pressed the accelerator harder. He matched my speed. The rain started again, a sudden, violent downpour that blurred the world outside my windshield. Think, Sarah. Think. I couldn't go home. I couldn't go to the police without proof. They'd call me paranoid, or worse, hysterical. Mark was charming, respected. No one would believe me, so I turned instead down a narrow, winding road that led to the cemetery, my mother's resting place. If this was where it all started, then maybe it was where I'd find my answers. As I pulled through the rusted gates, the SUV slowed but didn't enter. He parked at the edge of the road, headlights glaring through the rain. I grabbed my phone, clutching it like a lifeline, and ran through the rows of tombstones, water soaking my clothes, hair clinging to my face. My mother's grave came into view, the marble headstone shining pale in the moonlight. And then, my phone buzzed again. "Mom, you're close." "Look under the angel." I turned slowly. The statue of a weeping angel loomed beside her grave, its wings glistening with rain. Kneeling, I brushed away mud at the base. My fingers struck something solid, a small tin box, rusted and cold. I pulled it free and pried it open. Inside was a flash drive, and a note in my mother's handwriting. "If anything happens to me, you'll know who did it." I froze. The headlights behind me flicked off. The engine roared. He was coming. I sprinted to the far side of the cemetery, hiding behind a large monument as his footsteps crunched against the gravel. "Sarah." His voice echoed through the rain. "Stop running!" Lightning flashed. His face was twisted in anger, searching the shadows. He moved toward my mother's grave. I could see the angel statue, the disturbed soil, the open box. He realized what I'd found. His head snapped up. "Where is it?" I held my breath. He turned, scanning the darkness, and then his phone rang. He looked down at the screen, frowning. "Unknown number." He hesitated, then answered. The voice on the other end was faint but unmistakable. "Mark." My mother's voice. "You shouldn't have come here." He froze. "Who is this?" "You know who I am." I watched as the color drained from his face. Then, the phone slipped from his hand and hit the wet grass. He spun around wildly, shouting, "Mary! This isn't funny!" But there was no one there. Only the rain, and then, behind him, movement, the angel statue's head. Turned. Just slightly. Mark stumbled back, tripping over the uneven ground. His eyes went wide and he ran toward his car, slipping and cursing under his breath. I stayed hidden until the sound of his engine faded into the night. Then, shaking, I got up and stared at the flash drive in my palm. It felt like the last piece of her puzzle. I went straight to the old cabin by the lake, my mother's writing retreat, and plugged the flash drive into the laptop. The folder opened. Inside were hundreds of files, photos, documents, and one final video named Truth. I clicked play. My mother appeared, sitting at her desk. Her voice trembled. "If you're watching this, Sarah, I didn't die by accident. Mark found out I was going to tell you the truth. About him, about you." My breath caught. "About me? You're not his daughter by blood. I never told you because I wanted to protect you, but he wanted to make sure no one ever found out." Tears blurred my vision. I covered my mouth, trying not to sob. "He said he loved me once," she continued softly. "But that was before he met you. He used both of us, Sarah. Be careful. He's dangerous." The screen flickered, and then I saw it. Mark, stepping into the room behind her, face dark with fury. "You just couldn't stop, could you?" He snarled. "She deserves the truth. You've ruined everything." He grabbed her wrist. The camera fell, and then a scream. The video cut off. I sat in the dim light, unable to move. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the rain outside. A notification pinged on my phone. An email from Mom's old account. Subject, "The Rest of the Truth." Attachment, a document titled Mark's Records. I opened it and gasped. It was proof of identity theft, falsified documents, hidden accounts, and worst of all, medical reports. He had lied about everything. His name, his past, his entire life. And then I saw one more file. One that made my blood run cold. Sarah, transfer.doc. It was dated next week. A legal document transferring my inheritance to him. The rain had stopped, leaving a cold, misty night around the cabin. I sat at my mother's old desk, staring at the files on my laptop, my mind racing. Each document, each photo, each hidden account painted a terrifying picture. Mark wasn't just a liar. He was a manipulator, a con artist, and now he wanted everything I had, but he underestimated me. I took a deep breath and forced myself to calm down. Panic would get me nowhere. My mother's warnings echoed in my mind. Be careful. He's dangerous. Dangerous or not, I wasn't the scared little girl I used to be. I had learned from the best, from my mother, who had spent years building her life while protecting me. And now, it was my turn to finish what she started. I opened the last file. Sarah, transfer.doc. The document was nearly complete. All I had to do was sign to transfer my inheritance, everything my mother had built, to him. But I refused. Instead, I drafted a counterplan, delay the transfer. I would call the bank, report suspicious activity, and buy myself time, gather evidence. The flash drive wasn't enough. I needed proof that Mark had been lying, manipulating, and endangering my mother, and now, me. Expose him publicly. There would be no hiding this time. Mark's lies, his betrayal, and his greed had to be revealed for everyone to see. I smiled faintly. Revenge wasn't just about hurting him. It was about reclaiming my life. The next morning, I visited the bank. I told them about the suspicious transfer and presented the documents. They froze. After several hours of reviewing the paperwork, the bank manager looked at me in shock. "Ms. Parker, these documents aren't just irregular. They're fraudulent. If you'd signed them, you would have lost everything. But we can freeze the accounts and investigate further." I nodded, holding back a triumphant smile. My first move had worked. Mark would be furious. Next, I had to confront him, carefully. I couldn't rush, couldn't make a mistake. Using the emails, documents, and videos, I created a timeline of his lies, his manipulations, and his secret life. Each piece of evidence built a dam of proof that even he couldn't escape. Late that night, I called him. "Mark," I said, my voice steady, "we need to talk." There was a pause. Then, "Sarah, what do you want?" "I know everything," I replied. "About my inheritance, about Mom, about everything you've hidden. And it's over." There was silence, then a bitter laugh. "You think you can stop me?" "I already have," I said calmly. "The transfer is frozen, the accounts are under investigation, and soon, everyone will know who you really are." He growled through the phone. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, I can," I said, my fingers flying across my laptop. "And when I do, you won't just lose your reputation, you'll lose your freedom." Mark's voice wavered. "Sarah, you don't know what you're getting into." "I know exactly what I'm getting into," I said. "This ends now, and the moment it's over, you won't be able to touch me or anyone I love again." I hung up, my heart pounding. The first step of the plan was done. Now came the hardest part, the public exposure. The next day, I contacted a journalist who specialized in investigative reporting. I sent them everything: documents, emails, photographs, and the flash drive with the video. Within hours, they responded, "This is explosive. We'll verify everything and get back to you. If it's true, this could be front-page news." I smiled. My mother's warnings had guided me to this moment, but just as I was about to feel relief, my phone buzzed again. A new message. From an unknown number. "You're getting close. Stop now or you'll regret it." I froze. My hands shook. Mark knew. And now the real game began. I had to be smarter, faster, and more careful than ever. The battle for my life, my mother's legacy, and my future wasn't over. It had only just begun. The night stretched on, thick with tension. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle in the trees outside made me jump. But I refused to be afraid. My mother had raised me to survive, and survive I would, no matter what it took. I stared at the moonlight reflecting off the wet lake, the same lake where I had spent countless summers with Mom. I whispered a promise into the night. "I will finish this. For you, Mom, and I will win." The storm inside me raged. But this time, it was a storm of power, of control, of truth ready to strike. The next morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. The storm from last night had passed, leaving the world calm, but my mind was still racing. Mark had sent a threatening message, but I refused to let fear dictate my actions. I spent hours organizing everything: emails, bank statements, hidden accounts, and photographs. Each piece of evidence was a puzzle piece, and now it was time to assemble the picture that would expose him. I created a master file labeled Mark Exposed and backed it up in multiple places. One copy went to my trusted lawyer, another to the journalist who had promised to investigate, and a third stayed with me, hidden in my safe. Everything had to be airtight. One mistake, one slip, and Mark could destroy me. But I had learned from the past 3 months, patience was my weapon, precision my ally. By midday, I was ready. I drafted a carefully worded email to Mark. "Mark, you've been warned. The truth is coming and you can't stop it. The accounts are frozen, the authorities are aware, and very soon your lies will be public. This is your last chance to come clean." I hesitated before hitting send. The moment I pressed the button, there was no turning back. But I was ready. I wasn't the scared woman he had tried to manipulate. I was stronger, smarter, and determined. Within minutes, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Sarah, what have you done?" I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. "The truth, Mark. Nothing more, nothing less. And soon, everyone will see it too." His response was immediate and angry. "You're making a mistake. Do you know who you're dealing with?" "Yes," I replied calmly, "a liar, a thief, and a coward hiding behind his manipulations. And now everyone will see you for what you are." I hung up. My pulse was racing, but I felt a strange calm. The trap had been set, and Mark was already inside it, unaware of the storm about to hit. The journalist contacted me later that afternoon. "Sarah, we've verified everything. This is huge. Are you ready for the exposure?" "Yes," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Let's do it." That evening, Mark called again. This time, his tone was different, more cautious, almost fearful. "Sarah, wait, let's talk. We can fix this. Don't make a mistake you'll regret," I laughed softly. "Regret? That's a word you'll be very familiar with soon, Mark. I've been wronged, manipulated, and threatened. I will not stop until justice is served, for me, for Mom, and for anyone else you've tried to hurt." He fell silent. I knew he realized the game had changed. He was no longer in control. The next morning, the journalist published the story online. The headline was bold, undeniable. Mark Thompson, lies, betrayal, and a daughter's fight for justice. Within minutes, my inbox exploded. Messages poured in from friends, neighbors, and even strangers. People shared their own stories of being deceived by him. Social media lit up with comments, discussions, and debates. Mark's carefully constructed image crumbled in real time. Then came the phone call I had been waiting for. It was the bank. "Miss Parker, we need you to come in immediately. The investigation has uncovered even more irregularities. Mark Thompson is under scrutiny, and legal action is imminent. I exhaled. The first wave of the plan was complete, but I couldn't celebrate yet. Mark was dangerous. He was unpredictable. And he still had one card left, a secret that, if revealed, could ruin everything I had worked for. I prepared for the final confrontation. I reviewed every detail, every piece of evidence, and rehearsed how I would face him. The next time we met, there would be no fear, no hesitation. Only truth, only justice. The night before the meeting, I sat by the window, looking at the moon reflecting off the lake. Memories of my mother flooded me, her laughter, her wisdom, her warnings. I whispered a promise. I will finish this, Mom. I will not be afraid. I will win. And with that, I felt a surge of determination. The final act was about to begin. Mark didn't know it yet, but the storm he had created would be the one that destroyed him. The next morning, I arrived at the coffee shop where Mark had agreed to meet. I was calm, but every nerve in my body was alert. This was it. The moment when the lies, the manipulation, and the betrayal would finally meet the truth. Mark was already there, seated in the corner, fidgeting with his coffee cup. When he saw me, his face paled slightly. "Sarah," he started, but I didn't let him continue. "Mark, enough," I said firmly, my voice echoing with the power of every month I had spent preparing. "You've had your chance to hide, to manipulate, to threaten. But it ends today," he swallowed hard. "Sarah, please. We can talk. Maybe we can fix things." I shook my head. "Fix things? You want to fix things after everything you've done? Do you have any idea how many people you've hurt? How much you've lied?" Mark opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a folder, the Mark Exposed file. The thick stack of evidence looked innocent enough, but it contained everything. Photos, messages, bank statements, and recordings. "This," I said, slamming the folder on the table, "is the truth. Every lie you've told, every betrayal, every secret you thought you could hide, it's all here. And I'm done letting you manipulate me, my family, or anyone else." His eyes widened, panic creeping in. "Sarah, you don't know what you're doing. This could ruin everything." I leaned forward. "Exactly. It will ruin the lies you've built your life on. But it won't hurt me, because I am finally free. I am done being afraid of you. And soon everyone else will see who you really are." Mark tried to grab the folder, but I pulled it back. "Step back, Mark. This is your last warning. You can either face the truth or continue your path of destruction alone. But know this, I will not be intimidated again." For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, the same fear I had felt for months, only now it was reversed. The predator had become the prey. I handed him a USB drive. "Everything digital is here too. Every email, every transfer, every lie. The journalist has it. The authorities have it. You're out of time." He looked at me, defeated, as if realizing the walls of his carefully constructed world were collapsing. "Sarah, please." "No more please," I said, standing up. "You wanted control, Mark. You wanted to dictate how my life should go. But I am the one in control now." He sat there, pale, silent, unable to argue. I could see it in his eyes. He knew the game was over. The next few days were surreal. The story went viral, spreading across social media, local news, and even national outlets. Friends, neighbors, and strangers sent messages of support. People I didn't even know reached out, thanking me for my courage and sharing similar stories of manipulation and deceit. Mark tried to retaliate, sending angry messages, threats, and even attempting to contact journalists to discredit me. But I was prepared. Every action he took only reinforced the evidence against him. Finally, the authorities stepped in. Bank accounts were frozen, investigations launched, and Mark was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. I watched from a distance, a strange mix of relief and satisfaction washing over me. But the most important change was internal. For the first time in months, I felt truly free. No more fear, no more anxiety, no more living under the shadow of his lies. I had reclaimed my life. That evening, I sat by the window, the city lights reflecting in my eyes. I thought about the journey, the anger, the betrayal, the preparation, and finally, the triumph. I realized something profound. Power doesn't come from controlling others. It comes from controlling yourself and standing up for what's right. I smiled. Mark's world was in chaos, but my world was calm, restored, and full of promise. The last message I sent to him was simple. This is the end. Mark, live with your choices. And with that, I deleted his contact from my phone, finally closing the chapter of fear, lies and betrayal. Freedom, I realized. Tastes sweeter than revenge. The weeks after Mark's exposure felt surreal. I had reclaimed my life, but the aftermath was still raw. Every corner of my home reminded me of the months I had spent under fear, manipulation, and constant doubt. Yet now those reminders were no longer chains, they were lessons. I began small. The first morning, I brewed my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and pink. For the first time in months, I felt calm. No phone calls from Mark, no manipulative messages, no lurking fear. Just me, breathing, thinking, living. I started reconnecting with old friends. Some had reached out during the scandal, offering support, but I had been too consumed with anger and preparation to fully engage. Now I allowed myself to lean on them. Sarah, my friend Emily said over lunch one afternoon, you've been through hell, and yet you look stronger, like you've shed something heavy. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes for the first time in months. I guess I have, I replied, but it's still a process. I want to live without fear again, not just react to it. And so I started therapy, a decision I had postponed during the fight with Mark. Sitting in the quiet room, I faced the trauma, unpacking every manipulation, every lie, every threat. It hurt, but each session left me lighter. I realized that healing was not about revenge or exposure. It was about reclaiming my peace, my joy, my identity. I also focused on my career. The freelance projects I had abandoned during the chaos were back on my desk. I dedicated hours to rebuilding my portfolio, and surprisingly, clients who had previously hesitated now reached out, impressed by my resilience and the courage I had shown publicly. One day, while walking through the park, I noticed a young woman sitting alone on a bench, tears running down her face. I approached cautiously, remembering too well the feeling of isolation. "Are you okay?" I asked softly. She looked up, startled. I'm just overwhelmed." I sat beside her. "I understand. Sometimes life pushes us into situations that feel impossible. But you can survive. You can rise again." Her eyes widened, as if she was seeing hope for the first time. And in that moment, I realized my story wasn't just about exposing Mark. It was about inspiring others to reclaim their lives, to find courage in the darkest moments. The local media followed up on Mark's case, reporting not just on his downfall, but on my journey. The preparation, the courage, and the strength it took to confront him. I received emails and messages from women across the country, sharing their stories, thanking me for being a beacon of strength. I also reconnected with my family. The distance that Mark had created between us was slowly bridged. My parents, who had been cautious, now hugged me tightly, proud not of my revenge, but of my resilience, my ability to reclaim control and live authentically. I redecorated my apartment, filling it with light, plants, and art. Every corner now reflected growth and renewal, a visual representation of the emotional transformation I had undergone. The shadows of fear and manipulation no longer lingered. On weekends, I volunteered at a community center, mentoring women who had faced similar struggles. Sharing my story became therapeutic, but it also empowered others. The words I had once feared saying aloud, about exposure, courage, and reclaiming life, now inspired tangible change in others' lives. One evening, while sipping tea by my window, I reflected on the journey, the anger, the fear, the betrayal. They had all been powerful, but ultimately, it was my choice to rise above that defined the outcome. I smiled, feeling an unexpected sense of peace. Mark's chaos no longer had any space in my mind. I had walked through fire, exposed lies, and survived. And now I was finally living, truly living, without fear, without resentment, with my own power reclaimed. Freedom, I realized, wasn't just the absence of threat. It was the presence of self. I looked at the skyline, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, and whispered to myself, "This is my life now. Mine fully, freely, and boldly, and nothing, no one, will take it from me again." The morning air felt crisp as I stepped outside, the sunlight brushing my face like a gentle reminder of how far I had come. Life had begun to feel real again, not just a series of battles, accusations, or schemes, but a life of my own making. I had learned the hard way that trust, once broken, leaves scars. But those scars were no longer wounds. They were maps of resilience, reminders that I could survive betrayal and heartbreak. The first time I allowed myself to walk freely without checking over my shoulder was liberating. Each step echoed confidence. I smiled at neighbors, waved at familiar faces, and for the first time in months, the world felt warm, not threatening. I started receiving invitations to speak at women's empowerment events. Sharing my story of exposure, courage, and reclaiming control resonated with many. At each event, I reminded myself that my ordeal had meaning only if it inspired others to take back their lives. One afternoon, while preparing tea, my phone buzzed. A message popped up from someone I hadn't heard from in years, my best friend from college. "I saw your interview. I'm proud of you. Let's meet. It's been too long." Her words were a bridge to a past I had almost let fade entirely. We met at a small cafe, laughter flowing as though no time had passed. Reconnecting with old friends reinforced the fact that life wasn't just about surviving. It was about thriving. Even Mark's attempts to contact me had ended. Any threats or excuses he tried to use were futile. I had built walls not of fear, but of self-respect and experience. His shadow no longer held power over me. I also took the time to forgive myself. Forgiveness wasn't for Mark. It was for me, to release the anger that threatened to consume my peace. I journaled my feelings, each entry a step toward freedom. Each sentence allowed me to breathe a little easier, smile a little brighter, and embrace each day with hope instead of dread. Then came the day I met someone new. A kind, gentle man who respected boundaries, who understood the importance of trust, and who saw me for who I truly was. We didn't rush. There were no grand declarations, just quiet, comfortable companionship. "Sarah," he said one evening while we walked through the park, "I admire how strong you are. You've been through so much, yet here you are, open, honest, and full of life." I looked at him and smiled, feeling no rush, no pressure, just a sense of calm. "Thank you. Life taught me hard lessons, but it also showed me that new beginnings are possible. My family had fully healed too. My parents, siblings, and friends became my pillars, reminding me that support, love, and connection could triumph over betrayal and heartbreak. The final chapter of this ordeal wasn't about revenge, exposure, or humiliation. It was about reclaiming power, rediscovering joy, and embracing life fully. I had walked through darkness, but I now stood in the light, stronger, wiser, and unapologetically me. Evenings were my favorite. I would sit by the window, sipping tea, watching the city lights flicker as the night wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. I reflected on my journey, from betrayal to survival, fear to courage, despair to empowerment. I realized something profound. Life isn't about avoiding storms, but about learning to dance in the rain, to find beauty amidst chaos, and to rise after every fall. And with that understanding, I whispered to myself, I survived. I grew. I loved myself enough to move on. And now, my story isn't just mine. It's a testament to everyone who has ever been broken and dared to stand again. For the first time in years, I felt complete. Not because the past had changed, but because I had. And that was the ultimate victory. The sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of gold and purple. I sat on the balcony of my apartment, a cup of tea warming my hands, and let the day's quiet embrace me. Life had finally settled into a rhythm of peace, something I had thought impossible during the chaos with Mark, his lies, and the betrayal I had endured. I thought back to every painful moment, the arguments, the sleepless nights, the cold silences, the fear of losing everything I had built. Each memory carried a sting, yet it also carried a lesson. I had learned resilience, patience, and the strength that comes from standing up for oneself, even when the world seems determined to break you. The phone buzzed beside me. It was a notification from the YouTube channel I had started to share my story. Messages from viewers poured in. Thank you for sharing your courage. Your story gave me hope to leave an abusive relationship. You are an inspiration. My heart swelled. These messages weren't just numbers or notifications. They were lives touched, hearts encouraged, and courage sparked. I smiled, realizing that my story had grown beyond me. It had become a message of hope, a beacon for anyone who had felt powerless. The betrayal, the pain, the humiliation, all of it had become part of something bigger. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was helping others find the courage to stand again. Daniel had moved on too. Our bond had grown stronger, forged in the fire of shared pain and mutual respect. I remembered the nights he stayed awake, comforting me, and the quiet mornings we spent baking together in the warm glow of the bakery's ovens. He had become my anchor, my reminder that family could survive even the harshest storms. Evenings were no longer filled with anxiety or the fear of what Mark might do next. Instead, they were filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and the small joys of everyday life. The smell of freshly baked bread, the sound of a friend's laughter over the phone, the gentle rustle of leaves outside my window. One night, as I closed my laptop after replying to heartfelt messages from viewers, I reflected on how far I had come. I had turned betrayal into strength, loss into a platform for connection, and pain into empowerment. I realized something profound. My life wasn't defined by those who had tried to harm me. It was defined by the courage, love, and resilience I had nurtured within myself. I opened my journal and began writing, not about betrayal or pain, but about the victories, the lessons, and the dreams that lay ahead. I survived, I grew, I found my strength, and now I will continue to share my story so others can find hope in theirs. The next morning, Daniel and I opened the bakery together. The little bell above the door jingled as customers came in, smiling, sharing stories, and tasting the sweets we had crafted with love and dedication. Each smile, each word of encouragement, reminded me that life, despite its challenges, was full of moments worth cherishing. I looked around the bakery and thought of how my story had changed from a tale of betrayal to one of hope and empowerment. From Mark's selfishness and deception to my rise in confidence and independence, the journey had been long, painful, and transformative, and now it was time to give back. I began planning workshops for women in my community, sessions to empower, educate, and inspire. I wanted every person who had been silenced or trapped in fear to know that they had the power to reclaim their lives. I took a deep breath and looked at the sunset outside. The world was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes cruel, but it was also beautiful, full of potential, and forgiving for those willing to embrace it. I had been given a second chance, a chance to live authentically, courageously, and with purpose. I smiled as I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face and the love of those who truly mattered surrounding me. For the first time in a long time, I felt complete, not because the past had vanished, but because I had learned to rise above it, stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever came next. To anyone watching this, I whispered to the camera as I filmed a short closing message for my channel, remember that even in your darkest moments, strength lies within you. Trust yourself, stand tall, and never let anyone define your worth. Your story is powerful, and your life is worth every fight you'll ever endure. I uploaded the video, taking a moment to savor the feeling of sharing my journey, knowing it could touch countless lives. The notifications began to flood in, comments, messages, likes, and shares, proof that courage could be contagious, and that even from the deepest betrayal, something beautiful could emerge. As I looked at the city skyline bathed in twilight, I knew that this was not just the end of a chapter, but the beginning of a life lived fully and fearlessly. And with Daniel by my side, my community supporting me, and my story reaching hearts everywhere, I realized that the true triumph wasn't revenge or exposure. It was resilience, love, and the unwavering belief in a brighter tomorrow.